But we're not playing Standard here today. We're playing the other formats. We got Legacy and Modern. Legacy's all done. We have Modern upcoming, but just kind of briefly go over the Legacy results that we saw this morning. We ended up with 7 players who went 4-0 and swept the format. And you can see them here with Sam Rolfe, Fabrizio Onteri, who won our standard trial, number 5, and who I believe had said that he'd only played, when he won his trial, which was about a month ago, he'd only played something like 2 games of Legacy in his life up until that point. But put together 4-color Snowco and sweeps his rounds this morning. Richard Neal, Josh Feliciano, Levi Sprung, Will Kruger, who was our Legacy trial champion this year, and Nathan Stewart. So those were our 7 players who are at the top of the standings heading into Modern. And you can see the archetypes they played there. The Mono Green Ramp, I know there was an issue with the mislabeling of the Mono Green Ramp decks this morning. This actually is Mono Green Ramp. This is not a mislabeled Eldrazi deck. And then we see actually Storm. Storm comes out on top with the best breakers. We didn't see that on camera, but good for Mr. Rolfe. And you can see some of the other players of the rest of the top 16 and where they're standing. We did have let me adjust where I'm looking at here. We talked about the metagame briefly earlier, and the 4-color Snowco and Temur Delver, now the complete results after their 4 rounds done, they actually ended up being very similar to each other overall, whereas there was quite a spread after the first couple rounds. 4-color Snowco won 64% of its matches, and Temur Delver won 65%. So the 2 most played decks, both 1 did very well, and 2 did almost identically well with each other. So interesting to see how that turned out. Again, this archetype the metagame breakdown is a new thing for us, and we didn't realize we were going to have access to it, so we don't have the ability to put it up on screen for you today. But while we're still moving through kind of the Modern, or the break before Modern gets started, Caroline and I are going to take a minute to go through how the Modern decks shaped up. Now, unlike Legacy, where we had 14 and 13 as the 2 most played archetypes, the most played deck in Modern checked in with 6 copies. So, Caroline, I think you have this up in front of you also, but it ended up with a pretty diverse set of Modern decks, and that's exciting.
If you had asked me to name the most popular deck before looking at the slide, I would not have named it. It's actually Rakdos Death Shadow.
Right, I would have got it wrong also.
Yeah, but that's cool.
Rakdos Death Shadow checking in at number 1, and I guess we can just go through. So all the decks that have more than 2 players running them. We have Rakdos Death Shadow at 6. At 4 copies each, we have Selesnya Lands, Dimir Mill, Titan Shift, Infect, and Dredge. So a couple graveyard decks in that mix. And then at 3 players each, we have Mono Red Aggro, Selesnya Ramp, Tron, and Ad Nauseam. So out of that grouping, those decks with 3 players or more, what surprised? You're surprised Rakdos Death Shadow's on top, but you're not surprised that it's in the mix, I wouldn't think. What deck here actually surprises you that it's on this list with 3 or more players?
Well, where's the Omnath decks?
Yeah.
Where'd they go?
I don't know. Apparently,
is it 4-color control?
Maybe.
Okay, so one thing that we have to point out is the metagame breakdown specifically for Melee does run into some issues with deck naming.
It does.
And there's a lot of different options when you get into a deck that has 4 colors. So quickly scrolling through, because we have 2 pages of one type deck, I am seeing a lot more versions of Omnath around. Like there's a Temur Snow Uro deck, which maybe has Omnath in it. Like it's really hard to tell.
Right. So what you're saying is there might be Omnath Warp, Omnath Heartbeat, Omnath Ramp, Omnath with Uro, Omnath with Omnath, and because there are multiple Omnaths in the format. All kinds of stuff going on. For me, the thing that surprises me is the number of Ad Nauseam decks. I know that's a deck that exists in Modern. It's reasonable, but I'm surprised to see it, in the top 10 as far as representation.
It feels to me like a person. No, like you always have the ability to play Ad Nausea. Like if that's your deck, that's what you have. And then whenever it's low and nobody knows about it, you're like, oh, today's my day. Oh, I'm excited. I get to bring it. And I think that and Dredge and Infect are those type of decks. Like, they're not always good, but when they're good, the players that play them are like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go. Yeah. And I think Infect specifically, I saw a decent amount of talk on Twitter this week of just being like, oh, is it Infect's time to shine? So we'll see.
Yeah, and I feel like it's tough for myself. I don't see any. Well, it's hard to say if I don't feel any ability or any value in kind of guessing the metagame, but that's based on the fact that I always get it wrong. But yeah, if there's so I'm not a player who tries to predict the metagame and then plays a deck that's going to beat that. Is that something that you find yourself actively doing if you're getting ready for an event? Okay, no.
Okay, so specifically if we're talking about Modern, Modern or most of the Eternal formats, I have discovered that I'm a much better deck master in the sense that I can learn a deck over and over, like keep practicing it over and over again. And I'm much worse at predicting metagames, especially metagames that look like this, where it's like 4% and 6% and spread out across the board. So I have decided over the years to just put more effort into the deck I like or the deck that I think is good in general. And there are tournaments I show up and everybody has Blood Moon in their deck for some reason, and I was like, what? No. And I go 0-2. But for the most part, this has worked for me. It's not really usable in Standard. I think in Standard you do have to start learning how to judge metas and what deck that means for you to play. But in Modern, I've skated by playing pretty consistently the same deck for a while.
Okay, so let's go ahead and we have your deck submission. If you were playing the event instead of commentating, to look at what you were going to bring. And it's Mono Green Tron. So this is a deck. I mean, Mono Green Tron is a staple of the Modern metagame. What's significant about this? What choices did you feel like you made in coming to this list specifically?
Okay. Well, choice number one was going to a website with deck lists and looking at them. But in reality, for me, last time I posted what I would play deck list, I ended up posting a Tron list that didn't have Karn the Great Creator.
Right.
And we can debate whether or not that was an accident or I meant to do it. But what I can tell you this time with certainty is I meant to include Karn the Great Creator because I wanted to play. Well, I submitted this deck with a different name, by the way. I'd like to report a crime, but
is originally it like Mono Blue Ninjas?
No, it was called Tron Classic.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it got lost in translation, but that's okay. I wanted to just stop doing anything fancy. The meta, in my opinion, in Modern is just way too spread out right now for like a large 100-person tournament. I think you can maybe have. I think there's an all is dust in here somewhere. Yeah, there's one there. You can maybe have one or two of those type of cards, but I think you have to really stick to the basics for the rest of your deck, and then you can have your sideboard for all your shenanigans. But this isn't like a format where you should be playing, Veil of Summers in your main deck or something crazy. Like it's just too spread out.
Yeah.
And because of that, I went pretty classic. I have there's not a lot of choices in Tron. Right? There's like 50 cards that you have to play, and then 10 that I think people switch around, but including the lands. But I think Blaststone and Sanctum have at this point become the best utility lands to play. Ghost Quarters days are just over, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And some of the choices, like you have a Singleton All is Dust. So like we're definitely some power heavy removal spells. One Walking Ballista. That's a card that I feel like a year ago, Ballista was seen playing higher numbers, and now it's gone down. Now you have one, although realistically you kind of have 5.
Right,
so
exactly.
You're kind of cheating, but we've decided to let you get away with it.
Yep. Karn the Great Creator has seriously changed the Tron decks. Like, it's really, really impacted what you have access to at all times, and I think that's played with why Ballista's numbers are down, but also Modern in general it's not as creature based as it was. And so I think it was okay to cut down. Mind you, seeing things like Infect out there, might be missing my Ballista today.
Well, see, and that's one of the things I was going to say is, Ballista's numbers have gone down. I think one thing that's enabled that to happen is that Infect's numbers have gone down compared to several years ago. There's just not that much of it anymore. But you're right about creatures not being, I mean, they're still obviously everywhere, but they're not as important. Now, if we look at my deck, for example, which is almost a copy of Ricardo Sanchez's deck that he won trial number 4 with, I've just changed the sideboard a little bit. Again, we see here, creatures, if you come packing creature removal and play against 4-color Omnath Warp, it's going to be hard. I mean, there's creatures in this deck, but killing Omnath, that's not great. Killing Uro, that's not great either. This is a deck that's just kind of getting by at Planeswalkers and trying to dodge some of the interaction. Now, unfortunately for myself as a 4-color Omnath Warp player, the matchup with Mono Green Tron is probably poor, I would estimate, as I have no land destruction and no answers really to cards. But
I actually am not sure that's true. I just think your cards are just so much better than mine.
Well, but you have more potential to take over early. Anyway, so we are getting ready to roll with the modern portion of the event. So we have our first round feature match. We have, looks like Dredge versus Mill. That is interesting. But let's go ahead and check our deck list. We have Namdang playing Dredge, probably the benefitter of the pairings lottery here. And so this is, Dredge, we're attempting to put cards in our own graveyard. Now let's look at the opposing deck. Demir Mill, Lucas Vitale, whose deck is based on doing what?
Putting cards in our graveyard.
In the opponent's graveyard. So what happens here? Now, I'm not saying I actually know, but kind of it's like is this similar to like Burn playing against Death Shadow, where both players are trying to reduce one player's life total? In this case, both players are trying to reduce one player's deck?
I actually think that's a really great example, and I think it's not as simple. So the Burn player often thinks their advantage in the Death Shadow matchup, and the Death Shadow player often thinks their advantage,
right?
Because they're like, well, I know how to play around your Burn. And I'm quite curious to see if the Demir Mill player has that same, well, I know how to play around your graveyard. Like maybe holding a couple graveyard interactions until Nam has done some of the work for them. And then just boom, 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 and knock you out.
Yeah. Based on just the archetypes, I would have thought Dredge was heavily favored. There are 4 Surgical Extractions and 4 Soul Guide Lanterns main deck. Why are there Soul Guide Lanterns in this deck? Holy cow! That's terrible for the Mill deck. Or for the Dredge deck.
This is interesting.
All right. Well, let's see how this plays out. My impression, looking at the first deck list, I thought Nam was favored. Looking at the second deck list, I now think Lucas is way ahead. But we'll see what happens.
So we didn't have Nam's deck up for too long, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Merchant of the Veil, because I haven't seen a lot of Dredge lists at all recently. Is this stock? Is Merchant just a thing that people do now?
I'm with you on not having seen a lot of Dredge decks recently. It was shortly after the card was printed. I did see it showing up in some Dredge decks.
Okay.
It's kind of, it's basically half of a Faithless Looting, but Faithless Looting is no longer with us. And it, I believe that the rummage part of the card is at instant speed, so it's something you can do on the opponent's turn if you want to. And then it's a body, I guess, later on.
Yeah, so, my guess would be this card does not get cast very often.
Yeah.
As a creature, but
I think you're probably right about that. This is probably, we see Namdang, who we're watching from the perspective of, took a mulligan this game. If in the all-time history of I don't mind mulling in a matchup, this is probably like near the absolute top. Because
Tron would have a word with you there, but
no, I'm sorry. I specifically mean in this matchup.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Because if I only keep a 4-card hand, let's say I have 3 lands, whatever. My opponent's going to do the rest of the work for me anyway.
Speaking of which,
yeah. So Ruin Crab, which is. Yeah, this is really going to come down to, oddly enough, it's really going to come down to the graveyard hate cards. The problem is for Nam, the problem is that there are 8 of them instead of what you would think of like 3 or 4. And the second problem is that they're all in the main.
Yeah, they're in the main deck. That's going to be the tough part for sure.
Yeah.
And this 03, this is a Rune Crab, right? Mm-hmm. This is an 03 crab? Mm-hmm. Because there's 8 crabs in this list, I believe. Or at least they have access up to 8 crabs. And so the 03 is actually quite a significant blocker.
Yeah.
Which is quite funny.
Oh, and there we go. There's the first graveyard hate card. Surgical Extraction, main deck. Get wrecked. So that looks like it's targeting Stinkweed Imp. And so the Stinkweed Imps are gone, which is one of the dredgers. That's Now, depending on the amount of graveyard hate you have, whether you go after the dredgers or the kind of payoffs is a choice that you have to make on the fly in each game.
Right. This is interesting because I don't think Nam's dredges were like explosive, but the dust has settled. He has 3 creatures in play, and it's turn 2. Like that's got to be what he wants to be doing.
Right. Yeah. My suspicion is that surgical might have been better off if Sneak Cleanup's the only dredger in the graveyard, then go ahead, hit it. But if there's others, in this case, Life from the Loam, maybe you want to save it for Narcomoeba, Bloodghast, Creeping Chill, any of that grouping of cards, because okay, well, so the Surgical Extraction was not the only graveyard hate card available.
Yeah, I'll say that Nam is probably done using his graveyard for a little while.
Yeah, but
he has a clock.
Yeah, he does. There is a board established. I mean, even with the block here, 5 points gets through. This, I don't know. This is...
Ooh, does Nam play the Narcomoeba? It's 2 mana, right?
Yeah. Oh, I think you do. I think you play one of the creatures, and it may as well be the Narcomoeba, yeah.
I wonder if Nam is hesitating a little bit, thinking about playing a Life from the Loam naked, just to have a dredger next turn.
Maybe with the Soul Gate Lantern already on the board, I don't know if I would be. So I think probably what I would lean towards is cast one of the creatures next turn, cast the Loam, and as you're casting it, Gemstone Mine will expend its counters, and then you can just, if nothing else, get that Gemstone Mine back and play it for your land for the turn.
Right. Well, the Lantern might have something to say about that, right?
Well, yes, it will. But this is a real clock, and there are still, looks like, I think that's a 32, although I could be wrong, on cards in Namdang's deck.
Yeah, I have to admit this part is a little hard for us because some of the viewing parts are a little tough for us to see. But so yeah, I'm a little curious to know what the mill player is thinking. Like, how many traps do they have in their hand? At what point do they think about, when is best to use them? Like, it must be tough. Like, playing that turn 1 crab actually kind of threw me off. I had kind of scoped an idea in my head that maybe they wouldn't do that. That they would hold back some mill for a little bit.
Right.
Maybe because they did have 2 lanterns and a surgical in their hand, that kind of indicated, like, I've got this covered.
And here is a Field of Ruin that is actually not going to be replaced by a basic because they are gone. It also forces a shuffle.
Well, there's the trap.
And, whoa, there's 2 Creeping Chills. If a 3rd Creeping Chill flips over, that's game.
Oh!
I believe. And there it is.
There it is.
Oh,
wait, hold on.
But we
missed something.
Lantern is there to wipe the graveyard and end the game. So...
I was like, Nam's conceding. We must have missed something.
Yeah, no. Yeah, the Lantern is there to wipe things out.
Wow, those main deck lanterns are crazy.
Yeah, they are. I mean, so Hiding Needles potentially go in here. I think those lanterns were obviously beating. I think if you can stop the graveyard hate, then you don't need Lightning Axe to kill the crab. You can just let it happen. Let's go ahead and look at Lucas's sideboard and see what's going on over there. Specifically, we're looking at, are there answers to, like, Piling Needles, which do stop the lanterns? There's explosives if it comes in. There are Crypt Incursions, which are going to be brutal.
Can you tell me a little bit about what Crypt Incursion does? Is it something to do with, like, creatures in graveyard or something?
Yes, it is. Crypt Incursion, maybe we can pop it up, as other people probably don't know what it does either. It's a 3-mana black instant, I'm pretty sure, that exiles creatures from a player's graveyard, and you gain life for each creature that gets exiled.
Oh my.
So This is nightmarish. And this is on top of the main deck graveyard hate that already exists. So Lucas Hitel looking pretty good here. Let's go ahead and bring up.
One thing I want to say is I don't think Lucas has a lot of space to bring in that many.
Sure, that's true.
Because their deck is pretty well oiled at this point. So they don't need to cut the graveyard interaction cards. So I'm not even sure they can bring in any sideboard cards.
Well, I'm
maybe
sure
some removal. They can cut
find room for Crypt Incursion. That thing seems just too strong. Let's go and look at Lucas's route through the Legacy portion this morning. Lucas Hittel played Elves in Legacy, where he went 3-1, beating Sultai Hogak, Espervile, and Temur Delver while losing to Mono Green Ramp. All in all, a pretty good showing in the morning, leaving himself at 3-1. And then, up a game here in the first round of Legacy. I'm sorry, of Modern.
Mhm.
And up a Soul Guide Lantern to start game number 2.
Those player slides were pretty cool, by the way.
That's the first time we've had that this weekend. It's nice,
that was
right?
awesome. Yeah, I liked that a lot. Because I didn't stick around for Legacy. I was in chat a little bit, but that was nice to be able to be caught up right away. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I'm excited about having those for the future. And as we move later into the day, like we didn't use them much this morning because there's only a couple of rounds in the books. But as we move in later in the day, it's a really cool way to track the player and see how they played in the other format as well. Anyway, we see here Merchant of the Veil at the end step, I believe, and then an untap. And it's so brutal, this Soul Guide Lantern. It costs 1 mana to sacrifice it to draw, but I believe it's free to sack and wipe the graveyard.
It is, and that just meant that Nam couldn't really do anything.
Yeah. I mean, what?
What does, maybe... Oh.
Yeah, all right.
I didn't see that one hiding up there.
That's good. You can at least... I mean, you still lose your graveyard, but at least it's...
But we have potential to build it back next turn, right? Like we have a fetch land that we're I was gonna say not going to crack, but then I wasn't sure.
Yeah. And then actually gets used to draw a card, not to
makes sense.
Right. So setting up for this next turn, okay, there's lands to loan back. There's Stinkweed Imp could potentially be cast, although that's not very exciting.
We could cast the Merchant.
We could cast the Merchant. Maybe we actually will cast the Merchant. Since we have a bunch of
2 mana to discard? Discard a card, draw a card? Okay. I wonder if we catch... So the thing is, this is our turn to try and use our graveyard, but if our opponent just has another Lantern, we waste, loaming here would be pretty annoying. We would get lands back, but that would be it, right?
Right. Okay, so here we have Merchant of the Veil on the board.
I think I went on record saying we won't see this card cast. Oh no.
We won't go back and speculate as to what you might be wrong on. I don't want to start a trend of going back and see what the casters said wrong, because I would take a lot of pain out of that exchange, I think. All right, Visions of Beyond, just as a 1-card draw there.
Oh, I was told that card was Ancestral Recall. What?
I mean, it can be from time to time, but it's tough when you keep blowing the crap out of your opponent's graveyard for them to actually accumulate a lot of cards for Visions to...
That is a little bit of tension, we'll call it. For sure.
See, this is just poor deck building. When you're wiping out your opponent's graveyard every time, what do you think Visions is going to do?
Okay, so we got a Hedron Crab has shown up, which has left some dredgers in Nam's graveyard. It's very nice of the crab, actually.
Yes, it has. And we don't see an immediate... if there was a Lantern in hand, I would think we'd see an immediate fetch of the Flooded Strand, and then we could just play the Lantern and just mosey on our way of crushing Nam Dang for a second game in a row, but we're not seeing that. So if Lucas has to actually think about this, then maybe this game will actually be a little less one-sided than the other one.
So I'm a little curious if this is more of a surgical extraction situation, and they're trying to decide kind of when, where, and what for the surgical extraction. That's sort of the feeling I'm getting. Yeah,
that's certainly possible. Maybe Lucas is trying to decide how all in he wants to go here. There could be, I don't know. I mean, probably if the weakest mill cards, because obviously something got boarded out, even if it was somewhat light. The weakest mill card is maybe Maddening Cacophony.
Yeah, just costing 2 mana.
Right, and because if the crabs want to stay in it potentially as blockers, then traps are probably better. So yeah, maybe that's what it boarded out. And for Crypt Incursion and for whatever else, the fetch does in fact go off.
Interesting. So this is kind of the thing I was bringing up earlier. The mill deck, the player, they have to work a little bit harder in this match, in my opinion, right? They've got to really do some big brain thinking, when can I get my opponent cards, when can't I? Oh, wow. Set
Adrift, not a card you see
so that often. Fetch was just for the extra card in Delve.
For the Delve, yeah. So to get that merchant out of there.
That is the most respect that merchant has ever gotten. I'm just saying.
Well, so that merchant goes, I believe it goes on top of the deck and then just gets milled immediately. And Creeping Chill flips over to, well, I don't think this isn't really, a 6-point swing because Nam's life total matters 0 in the matchup. So it's really just a bolt, but it's free. So I'm sure he'll take it.
Well, I guess in theory you could call it a 1 to 3 points swing, right? Because the Creeping Chill is a card. So that's one part of his deck damage.
Sure, yeah. Another thing that just occurred to me is that this mill deck is a Loris deck. So those lanterns can just keep being cast if we actually get to that point in the game.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed from this matchup is that doesn't seem like, I think it's just too fast. One player is going to win before then.
Yes.
Because the Loris plan actually does require a lot of mana these days.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like we're conflagrating.
Right. Take out the crab. We've got plenty of bad cards.
Oh, this is... Yeah, I like this. So Nam gets to bring back those blood gas, and then also I think there's 2, or maybe there's only 1. No, there's 2 prize amalgams in the yard, so...
Mm-hmm.
Nam will have some creatures in play.
Yeah.
And...
Now this is...
about 30 cards left. Oh, hold on.
So, yeah, not so much on the creatures in play. And this... For Namdang...
Did we miss that?
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no. I was just going to ask, if we had played Aramesa first, we would have been able to fetch a response, right?
Well, if we'd played Arid Mesa first, then we would have fetched anyway, and then the Searcher would have responded to the fetch.
Okay. So we weren't getting it no matter what.
I think I think we could have got it by playing it slow, and by playing the fetch next turn, loaming up a different land, and then playing another land, and then the trigger goes off, and you can fetch a response in that case.
Okay.
But I understand Nam doing what he did because it feels like you can't afford to go slow because you're just getting pummeled here. This, for Namdang, this has got to be extremely frustrating. Maddening Cacophony did stay in, hits 2 Narcomoebas and a Creeping Chill. There's a vision.
Oh, there's the Ancestral Recall.
Yeah, that one hits good.
Down to 5. Lucas is down to 5
and
life.
all kinds of stuff just triggered. And Namdang wins this game. Lucas decides he's not going to be able to defeat the board, which is going to finish him off on the next turn. These games are going to be, I'm realizing now, not only are they going to be brutal, they're going to be very swingy.
They are going to be quite swingy. One thing that's kind of interesting is when one player is focused on life total and the other player is focused on the same graveyard, because they're both playing on the same graveyard, the games are quite fast.
Yeah. Yeah, this is something else. Okay, it looks like both players have submitted already for game 3, and we're going to have Lucas on the play here this time. Namdang's opening hand looks, well...
Does it look like anything?
No, it looks pretty bad.
Okay.
And like we were saying at the outset, this is a matchup where you really can afford to mulligan. This one...
Wait, this is the same hand. This is a mulligan, but there are some similar cards in this hand.
This is, we could go turn 1 Conflagrate for 0, turn 2 flash it back, ditch your dredgers. So this is a conceivable keep. The first hand I don't think had a dredger in it.
Oh, you're right. I think the first hand had the Conflagrates and a Bloodghast, but not a dredger.
So this one, we see Nam taking his time on this one, and I understand that because we're already on 6. Do you want to go lower? Because this is keepable, even though
it's slow.
The whole matchup seems hopeless, but obviously we're not going to give up. So we got to think: can we do better on this on 5, or do we want to turn to set up the Stinkweed Imp in the graveyard, turn 3, be able to dredge?
I've played a little bit of dredge, and I'm keeping this, but Nam, I know for sure, has played a lot more dredge than me, and so there's a little bit more of an understanding of whether or not he should keep that. So. Okay,
so we see...
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Our plans.
So they keep and put back on the bottom of 1 Conflagrate, and then Soulguide Lantern for the 3rd game in a row. Lucas has one opening hand, And how do you even start this out?
Yeah, do you just wait till you draw the Ancient Grudge? I don't know.
Not sure. Or wait until 1 mil is over. I'm going to go ahead and say here, I don't like Nam's first turn land choice. If the Blood Crypt had been played and his second black land had been drawn, the Blood Cast could have been hard cast, and he didn't give himself the opportunity to do that. It didn't matter. It ended up mattering, but okay, Golgari Thug comes down on turn 2. I mean, there's no crab this game. This is an attacker. A slow one, but Creeping Chills can do a lot of burst damage, so pecking away at the life total can matter.
So Lucas isn't up to much from... Oh, no, never mind. That was end step. Okay, here we go. So we're on Lucas's turn.
Lucas is kind of incentivized to wait for Nam to put some stuff in his graveyard, and then Lucas puts more stuff in the graveyard and blow the lantern all at once. Nam's, on the other side of things, has got to try and avoid that scenario by slow playing and then timing things in the right order, or potentially, if the Python Needles came in also, which I'm not sure if they did or not, and on top of the Ancient Grudges, then there's actually a reasonable outs to the lantern, but we'll have to see. I'm not sure what just happened there.
Luris, I assume.
Oh, Luris came into the hand. Okay.
Yeah. So here's my thing. I think it's pretty clear that Lucas doesn't have crabs, or is at least choosing not to cast them, because 2 fetches have been used pretty quickly. Which kind of implies that there's sirens behind me, but it implies that Lucas is letting Nam do all the milling this game. And I was trying to decide if you could take advantage of that somehow. But it looks like Nam did decide to cast the pretty good draw for the turn, which is Cathartic Reunion.
Cathartic Reunion, and gets 3 Narcomoebas, and this, if there's a black mana source in Lucas's hand, I don't see how Nam is gonna recover from this.
Because oh my gosh, Luris next turn just straight into Lantern again.
Yeah. So this feels like, okay, we burned off the Lantern, now we can really start to try and do stuff. But if there's a black mana source, we actually didn't do anything. Oh my gosh.
Yep, there was.
So now, not only do we have to kill our opponent through this minefield of hate cards, we have to kill this Luris, which is just incidentally in the way and annoying.
Well, we do. We get priority, right?
Right.
Conflagrate for X is 0.
And
then we immediately hold priority. So we do get to deal with the Luris.
Right.
Yay.
We have some garbagey cards to throw away. Narcomoeba and an Imp, which forces...
I love that we're holding the Creeping Chill, by the way.
Yeah, what are you talking? This is 4 mana bolt.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah, so the Luris gets dealt with, which...
We're back to this Lantern issue.
Yeah, and there's a crab, so that was a blocker.
Oh. Okay. So now Lucas has to decide, does he want Nam to draw? Oh, I guess we did. Okay.
Right, so there's Dredge of the Imp. Yeah, just... Nam has to force Lucas to blow this Lantern at some point and then hope there's nothing else. There's not really anything else that he can do. I suppose, Synchroid Imp being cast this turn seems okay. We can't even attack right now. Stupid crabs.
This was just the O2, right? It's not even the good one.
Is it O2? I was thinking they were both O3, but maybe you're right.
No, I believe the Hedron Crab is, it's an O2.
Okay. All right.
Because that's why the new one got an upgrade somehow. Well, the new one is a little different. It's
right.
You can't target yourself with the new one, but I think it goes okay.
Yeah, we actually saw that this morning in the Hogak deck, where it can't actually play both of them the way this deck can, because it's only trying to kill itself.
Oh, that's so funny.
The new one doesn't actually help them at all, whereas the Hedron is an enabler.
Well, Nam settled on what you kind of suggested, the Stinkweed Imp coming in.
Yeah. If you're settling for a 3-mana 1-power evasive attacker, you really had no other options, because this is just dreadful. what can we do? How many cards are in Lucas's hand? Only 5. Oh,
Only 5.
With and Soulgate Lantern's on the board, so it's basically like another card in hand.
So I assume, or I'm thinking Nam's plan is forcing Lucas to pop the lantern using their own landfall triggers, so that our Cathartic Reunion can maybe do something.
Sure.
But we'll see if that is indeed what's happening.
This is the field in response to generate another landfall trigger with the Creeping Chill in the stack. So trying to maybe get more. So this is looks like Soulgate Lantern is probably going to be activated here, and Lucas is going to try and get as much as he can for that one trigger.
Did you see that
maybe not. That might change things a little bit. Maybe
we don't get any cool effects, right? If they take it from our hand.
No. The Creeping Chill? No.
Yeah.
No, we don't get any extra. Like some of those newer versions. The new versions, those cards, you get a 2/2 or you get a card.
Draw a card.
You don't get anything here.
Lame.
Yeah. You get the shaft. You're done. But, okay. So, what? Archive Draft 2.
Oh, no. How many cards? Nam's down to 14 cards. 5 cards. That might be the end of the road.
Yeah, so dredging is over with, as you're just decking yourself immediately now.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to just draw your cards for 5 turns, play your second imp. In fact, I'm sorry, you don't have a third land anymore. We can't even play the second imp.
I think that might be the end of the road for us. Oh, there's a third land that probably will not fetch anything.
Yeah, and there goes the lantern.
I have enjoyed the swings. And by the swings, I mean your swings. Because when we first queued up the match, you're like, Dredge has got this. It's going to be great. And then Mill was like, no.
I didn't know that Lucas was going to have 10 graveyard hate cards, with 8 of them being in the main. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, what does Luris count for? Because it's an extra graveyard hate card, theoretically, but it's also always in your hand.
Yeah. There was a land left to get. All right.
Lucky.
Merchant of the Veil, get into play, join the attack force if it gets drawn, then Lightning Axe on the Crab. Lucas only has 1 card left. I think we can safely shock. You don't want to go for it?
No. Nam's had enough.
There's not enough damage in the deck to win that match. So Lucas Hittel moves to 4-1. We looked at his progress earlier. He played Elves, I believe, in Legacy, and now up his first round with Mill in Modern. And a version of Mill, I don't keep up with the metagame changes in the Mill deck, but since the last time I've played against Mill, it didn't look quite like that. Maddening Cacophony didn't exist yet. Soulgate Lantern being a main deckable card, people play Relic. This is similar, except that the graveyard wipe option is free, and that's going to matter sometimes.
Yeah, being able to just chill and hold it up the whole time is pretty crazy, especially against Dredge.
Yeah, that was harsh. There was no other way to put that. That's not a match that Nam should be ashamed to have lost.
I feel bad because I actually requested watching Nam play because he's a friend of mine. So I feel like I might have accidentally put him through that misery. Oops.
Oh, boy. Okay, so let's go ahead and see. There's 2 tables still playing. Okay, well, I guess we don't have the pairings available for this round to go over the results. So we'll see if we can get that fixed up for next round. In the meantime, there's just a few matches still out. So we're going to step away for a minute, and we'll be back with round 6, which is going to be round 2 of Modern. So stick around. We'll be